person to be fully. Yeah. So exactly. So I turned it back. Like I spoke to my primary supervisor at that time. This person long time. It was been very it's the material
I don't know.
Oh yeah, he's lovely. He's lovely. So he was present me like if we don't him, then he will tell teams.
It's a little bit more.
Oh no! So by the time I received that, I went to the video. I got the evidence. This person is not honest. I don't know how we been down south.
I think so. So you unloaded. So you unloaded.
That's why I got it.
Yeah. Because I had, and then I think I had a supervisor that recognized his findings actually
American stars.
organizing a conference at the Gulf Coast. And he wanted me to go money for it. It's called
The Japanese.
and I said, well, I'd like to do that, but I have to stop and trying to do a PhD. And I'm not sure if I can do it. And
It's a bit warm because they're walking from the social center station.
only I, and fortunately, I had a department.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They 10 kilometers. You've been in a flight.
Only the student can see it. So he was the head of a school.
Yeah.
So he pushed himself onto my
You
group.
came from Queen.
I finally got it. And it was all political.
Yeah,
There wasn't one
On the street and flagged me down.
school that where the no, before teachers.
Usually do.
It was where the MBA, MIT, and they became.
I didn't get my car. I gave a very bad night.
Specifically for the.
Oh, that's right. It's still business.
Yeah, 30 years ago, when I first arrived, they were finishing that. And they.
Let's grab a seat. There's also, it's so fast. There's not much business now. I don't know. It is hard.
Yeah.
See.
Anyway, he was.
It was at evening, 12:30.
I don't think it.
No, in the.
They registered.
Because she wasn't there when I arrived, so maybe I should say I should have been.
Kept like.
And she lied, instruction wise.
Yeah, the big part of there.
Yeah, I was in like
Similar found models.
is.
Yeah.
I came down from Berents and have to go.
Oh, okay, so I just want to say hi that I'm here.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Because it's about
Thank you. Sorry.
or later and all we can advance your
Okay, so, yeah, this is what they do. I feel so sorry for, after all that hard work, and they want to other power administrators, like to have a PhD.
25th anniversary of the Women's Security Agenda from the Women's Security Council.
Well, although they really my expertise, it's just like, so.
Otherwise, you good.
Well, I had contract only for 6 months to work with my expertise.
What happens after that? A university decided.
Oh, here it is.
Staff. And then it's pretty actual legislation security that I think easily across all of that.
Oh, really?
Very cooperative, unlike hers.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. Sorry to interrupt conversations. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. Just checking that online can hear us as well.
Yep.
Excellent, perfect. So I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be opening this event. I'm Dr. Helen Berents. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Government and International Relations at Griffith University, and I'm also a member of the Griffith Asia Institute, who are hosting this event for us today. As I begin, I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the unceded lands of the Turrbal and Yague peoples and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Griffith University across our campuses is on the lands of the Turrbal, Yague and Kombumerri peoples, and I pay my respects to all peoples whose lands we're on every day at work and who I live on every day as well. I'm also very aware that we have people online, and so would like to extend that respect to the people who, the First Nations owners of the lands perhaps that you are on right now or that you've come from today in the room as well. Happy International Day of Peace for Sunday. We're celebrating 48 hours early. And I think sometimes when I was thinking about remarks to start us off, it's difficult in this current context, perhaps, to say we're celebrating a day of peace when we're facing so many challenges. But I also think that's why it's so important to celebrate, to acknowledge, to recognise the work that's going on. And today we're doing just that. So I'm incredibly excited to be here. This event, as I said, is hosted by the Griffith Asia Institute. It's in support of the ASEAN Institute of Peace and Reconciliation, and we're thrilled to see so many people here and online. If you are joining us online, usual rules apply. Please keep yourself muted as you join, and we'll keep an eye on things and hopefully nothing goes wrong. For those in the room, the toilets are just this way. There's tea, coffee and juice just out on the deck, and you're welcome to help yourself to it throughout the event as well. So we're here today to mark the release of the ASEAN IPR regional study on youth peace and security. Please come in. The study was formally launched in Jakarta at the end of last month and has been the result of several years of persistent work by the research team with dedicated support by ASEAN IPR, who we're partnered with today here. The release of the study is a milestone event for the region and for the youth peace and security agenda, which I'll introduce you to if you haven't heard, globally as well. Southeast Asia often finds itself overlooked in global discourses of peace and security, yet it has one of the largest youth populations and is facing down many of the pressing challenges of our time, from climate change, from challenges to democracy, rising inequality, and rapid shifts in technology as well. So by way of contextualising the conversation today, before I hand over to the study's lead author to tell us, before I hand over to ASEAN IPR to tell us the context, and then the study's author to tell us about the study, I just wanted to note, I guess, the environment in which this study has been released. So Southeast Asia often gets described as a peaceful region, and in some ways it definitely is. While we're lucky not to have experienced the extent or devastation of perhaps intra and interstate wars that have affected other regions of the world in recent decades, we're not free of the consequences of conflict, violence and insecurity. Just in the last month, in fact, while Erika Yague was in Jakarta for the formal launch of this study there last month, we saw the youth protests and violence that rocked Indonesia at the time, with tragic results that left 10 people dead. In Myanmar, the resilient resistance of youth since the military coup in February 2021 is testing the resolve and well-being of young Myanmar nationals. Close by in Nepal, so neighbouring to Southeast Asia, we've just seen deadly protests that have claimed 72 lives. This year also marks 10 years of the Youth, Peace and Security agenda. Erika's going to talk a little bit more about it in her presentation, but let me just say, for those who are unfamiliar with it, welcome. The YPS, Youth, Peace and Security agenda, started in 2015. With a UN Security Council resolution, and it established a groundbreaking agenda because it recognised for the first time young people's positive contribution to peace and security. There's now 3 resolutions at the Security Council, regional commitments, national action plans, and a lot of activity. Stay tuned and look out. There will be plenty of online and in-person celebrations the first week of December as we mark the decade. So all of this then sets the backdrop for why it's so important and timely that we meet here today in person and online as well to discuss and contextualise this first regional study of youth, peace and security in ASEAN states. We have a packed program, so I will stop very shortly. We have a presentation from ASEAN IPR, an overview by the study's lead author, and then 2 fabulous panels designed to contextualise and situate the study in relation to broader landscape and questions and thematic issues. But to start us off, I would like to invite Professor Lou Cabrera up here to give us a welcome. Lou is a professor also in my school, School of Government and International Relations, and is the Diplomacy and Governance Hub Lead in the Griffith Asia Institute as well. Thanks so much, Lou, for being here.
Apologies everyone for my tardiness. I was actually picking up a family member from the hospital and finally just had to shove the doctor out of the way and say, I'm taking it home. Got to get there. But I'm very pleased to be here today and pleased to see this exciting event coming together. I'm here as a representative of Griffith Asia Institute. For decades, it has helped Griffith University engage the Asia Pacific region. We've got about 130 members and 5 or 6 hubs that specialize in particular areas. So I'm in the governance and diplomacy hub, which focuses on international relations, political science, that sort of thing. And we're very happy to support a great initiative like this. What else can I say about GAI? It engages the region, it engages the world. If you look on our website, you'll see just a ton of really interesting reports. I think, Larry, you've written a couple of them, and where researchers use their expertise to offer accessible summaries of really what's going on in the world and what it might mean for Australia and the broader region. So really happy to be here today to support this great event. Thank you.
Appreciate it and very much appreciate GAI's support. So I'm now going to hand over to Katika, who is joining us online. Well, I think this, could you just introduce Katika?
Okay.
So
again, thank you so much for coming. Kartika, before I introduce her more formal role, has actually been really the backbone of this ASEAN YPS study. And she was the one who really opened the doors to young people to be part of this entire endeavor. And aside from Kartika being, a partner for young people, she has been with ASEAN IPR since 2021 as the project management officer, handling overall project development, fundraising, implementation, monitoring, and above everything else, capacity building for the Institute and even for ASEAN member states. She is the focal point for the Institute's Secretariat for Women, Peace and Security Matters, as well as the point of contact for the ASEAN Women for Peace Registry, so the AWPR. So the Institute's only pool of experts when dealing with young women, peace and security. So Kartikeya has previously worked at the ASEAN Secretariat, UNESCO office in Jakarta, and TIFA Foundation. In commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the UK-Indonesia diplomatic relations, Kartikeya was one of the awardees of the Ambassador's Award under the category of peace. So handing the floor over to Kartikeya.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible? Can you hear me clearly? Okay, please let me know if I freeze or if you lose certain points of my presentation. Please alert me. I hope my internet connection is steady throughout the entire presentation. Good afternoon, everybody in Brisbane and friends and colleagues in various corners of the world. It's a great honor for the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation and myself personally to take part in this discussion. I would like to thank Griffith University and Griffith Asia Institute for coming up with this initiative and for allowing us to have this wonderful, timely conversation on youth peace and security in ASEAN. As earlier introduced by Helen and Erika, this study is very important for ASEAN IPR, and we have spent so much time and energy making sure that the study is approved, adopted, launched. I think I just would like to introduce a little bit what is ASEAN IPR, perhaps for the benefit of friends and colleagues who have not heard of our small institute before. So the ASEAN IPR, we are something called an entity associated with ASEAN. If you have seen the ASEAN Charter and you go to Annex 2, our name will be listed there under think tanks. Our role and function is similar to a think tank because we do research and capacity building on peace, conflict resolution, reconciliation and peace building, conflict management, transformation, conflict prevention. And we try to cover a lot of ground under our small team. And women, peace and security, youth peace and security is two of the areas of focus. And we have spent a lot of time trying to advocate on these two issues under the ASEAN framework. Maybe not everybody is aware of what ASEAN is like, so I would like to take this opportunity to reintroduce ASEAN and the ASEAN architecture. Like Helen said, just to provide a context and to explain how ASEAN works and why this study is important. Maybe going into the first slide. So this is an organigram of the ASEAN structure. I always like starting off from this organigram because it's a simplified version of how to understand the overall ASEAN architecture, because it could be very confusing. I would like to say that ASEAN has its own language. Our working language is English, but with all the abbreviations and the terminologies that we use under ASEAN, it could be like speaking an alien language. And it'll be really nice if I can introduce this language to everybody in the meeting and in the discussion this afternoon. So in terms of structure, of course, the highest decision-making body in ASEAN is the ASEAN leaders, the heads of states and heads of government. And because ASEAN is very much driven by foreign policy and diplomacy, so of course, sometimes the next level of decision-making or the next level in terms of political commitment will fall under the foreign ministers. And in this case, we have the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. So the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, they will meet at the most once a year. That's their main meeting, which is in July or August. And this is where all the various political commitments, declarations, or statements will come out. They do have one informal meeting or one retreat, usually at the beginning of the year. And these meetings will always be hosted at the ASEAN chair country. So the ASEAN chair country will follow alphabetical order of the ASEAN member states. Right now, we have Malaysia as the ASEAN chair for this year. So ASEAN is guided by their lofty goal of creating this ASEAN community, and to translate that goal of building an ASEAN community, they since 2009 they have created this ASEAN community blueprint, or their master plan to create the ASEAN community. And we would usually go by these three ASEAN pillars: the ASEAN Political Security Community, the ASEAN Economic Community, and the ASEAN Social Cultural Community. And this is why I've laid out the structure as such. How we have the highest level will be the APSC Community Councils, AEC Community Councils, and the Social Cultural Community Councils. And these respective community councils will look at the blueprints or the roadmap of each respective community councils and evaluate and review the implementation of these community council blueprints. As of this year, very recently at the last ASEAN Summit in May, ASEAN just launched their ASEAN Community Vision 2045. And the new terminology that they call it is strategic plan. So now when we say APSC, AEC, ASEC, we call them APSC, AEC strategic plans. Now, the community councils, we will have the ministerial level sitting there, and there's usually coordinating ministers taking part in this community council. They will be reviewing the implementation rate of each community council blueprints or strategic plans. The next level, of course, you will have the ministerial meeting, and this will be very specific to the issues or areas of focus of cooperation. Under political security, you will have the ministerial meeting such as ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting, ASEAN Ministers Meeting on Transnational Crime. Under AEC, you'll have your Finance Ministers Meeting, you'll have your Transport Ministers Meeting and such. Under ASEC, you have the ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Youth, Ministerial Meeting on Women, Environment, etc. But these are like just so you can say like just for the show, because all the main work, all the main policies, all the main discussions, and the meat of the negotiation will come under the senior officials meeting level, and these are director generals or director level. And this is where most of the core work of ASEAN is being driven by these senior officials meeting level. Because they'll be the ones considering all the project implementation, all the initiatives, all the events that are undertaken by ASEAN. So oftentimes when somebody who is not familiar with how ASEAN works, if they come and ask, I want to engage with ASEAN and work on a particular issue. As someone who has worked at the ASEAN Secretariat or someone who is aware of how ASEAN works, our first suggestion would be please engage with the senior officials meeting level, because they will be the ones who know the work plan of each respective bodies. We call them ASEAN sectoral bodies, and they would know what their priorities for that year or priorities for those 5 years. And they will be the ones who are more able or more agile to be engaged with. So we would recommend knocking on the doors of the senior officials meeting first. Now, the chairpersonship of each senior officials meeting or each sectoral body, they don't always follow the chairpersonship year or chairpersonship country. Like I said, this year Malaysia is the main chair of ASEAN, but you may find that some ASEAN sectoral bodies will not be chaired by Malaysia. So there may be some sectoral bodies that will follow a different chairpersonship rotation. And this would sometimes benefit the chair country, because then trying to host 3,000 something meetings of ASEAN all in the same calendar year can be quite taxing and taxing on the resources, both on human resource and yeah, on the likes as well. Now, this overall system is supported by the Secretary General and their team at the ASEAN Secretariat. So you'll have the Secretary General, who is of ministerial level. So he has the same position or same level as minister. And the Secretary General will be supported by his 4 Deputy Secretary Generals. And the four would follow the respective community pillars. And we have one additional one who is responsible for community and corporate affairs, but that's more of the internal work or supporting ASEAN as a whole. So the ASEAN Secretariat with their, I think, 400 something staff members is responsible to support the work of ASEAN with this entire architecture, as you can see on the screen, as well as supporting the overall ASEAN community building efforts for the 650 million people in the region. I think it's still 650. It could be 670 at this point. Moving to the next, this is the ASEAN community and its pillars. So this is a simplified explanation of what the 3+1 pillars are all about. The easy way to remember it is I would always call it APSC, you relate it with peace. AEC, you relate it with prosperity. ASCC, you relate it with people. And ASEAN connectivity, you relate it with partnership. So the four P's: peace, prosperity, people, partnership. And those are just, sorry, just the keywords that how you can connect immediately, because the abbreviations can be a mouthful: APSC, AEC, ASCC, and ASEAN connectivity, because that is the gist of it, of each pillar. For political security, you're always focusing on making sure that the region is peaceful and stable, and that everybody within the 10, soon to be 11 ASEAN member states and its partners from around the world work together to ensure that there is peace, not just within this region, but also ASEAN contributes towards global peace and harmony as well. AEC, prosperity, is focusing more on how the region can prosper together and having equal opportunities in terms of trade and working for the single market and production hub, and having a balanced competition, and focusing on the free flow of goods, services, investment, capital, and labor. So that's why I said the key word for AEC is prosperity. So for social culture, it's focusing on people-to-people exchange, environment, livelihoods. So this is where you'll have the cooperation on youth, women, education, sports, social work, labor, civil service matters is under AICC pillar. And lastly, connectivity is something new, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was developed 2014, but it's focusing more on infrastructure development. So there's a little bit of overlap for ASEAN connectivity initiatives with initiatives under AEC and ASCC. But the focus is, like I said, is more on partnership and linking, making the region more interlinked, physical, institutional, and people-to-people linkages. Coming into the next slide. So ASEAN youth in the region, how ASEAN sees youth. You will always see youth identified as beneficiary of this ASEAN community building efforts. You'll see them identified several times under the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. You'll see them identified in various ASEAN documents, but the level of engagement and the level of opportunities for engagement between the youth and ASEAN officials or ASEAN system could be very limited. Like I said earlier, there is something called the ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Youth, and under it, there's the ASEAN Senior Officials Meeting on Youth. So the focus of the youth development in the region has been mostly on youth leadership, voluntarism, focusing on upskilling the youth on life skills, and encouraging entrepreneurship skills, focusing as well perhaps on education opportunities, how to empower the out-of-school youth. So it's been more on, as you can see, like economic opportunities or social cultural opportunities. Very rarely has it been given focus on the civic political rights or access of youth in ASEAN. And it's very interesting that if you look at the ASEAN Community Vision 2045 document, there is at least 2 mentions about having the youth become active contributors to decision making in ASEAN. And there is a specific mention on youth, peace, and security under paragraph 5.4 of the ASEAN Political Security Strategic Plan. For ASEAN IPR, we see this as a small victory because when we were consulted by the high-level task force who drafted the new ASEAN Community Vision 2045, we remember that we specifically mentioned women, peace and security and youth, peace and security as important agendas that ASEAN should take into consideration and should uphold. And we were very happy when we saw paragraph 5.4, the mention of WPS and YPS. And we see this as ASEAN's commitment for the next 20 years that they are going to undertake this work. So we go into the next slide, which I think I mentioned. This is the old work plan on youth. Unfortunately, they are still right now undertaking consultation to develop the next work plan. But like I said, for the areas of focus on youth cooperation in ASEAN, it's not so much on the civil political matters, it's more on education, health and well-being, employment opportunities, participation and engagement, and ASEAN awareness, values, and identity. When you see participation and engagement, it doesn't necessarily correlate with the pillar of participation under the YPS agenda. Participation and engagement here relates more, as I said, to volunteer work, so voluntarism. So for the past few years, I think the youth cooperation is very big on the issue of volunteer work, particularly because the region is highly impacted by natural disaster. And with the experience of COVID, I think a lot of the drivers of the volunteer work is undertaken by the youth. And there's also the heavy component on ASEAN awareness, values, and identity. So you will see a lot of ASEAN initiatives on scholarship, youth exchange, youth partnership, and all that. So it's where ASEAN likes to implement a lot of these, one vision, one identity, one community motto that we have, and the youth are being the main target for this. So ASEAN IPR has been invited to several meetings of the senior officials meeting on youth, mostly during the open session, where we update our initiatives related to youth, such as our training for youth on peace building, our training on ICT and youth, our trainings on youth and PCVE, and of course, our regional study on youth, peace and security. We are identified as an affiliated organization under priority number 5. Coming into the next slide. Like I said, we are happy that the youth are mentioned a couple of times under the new roadmap of ASEAN for the next 20 years, under this grand vision of what ASEAN would look like by 2045. It states there that a community where youth can meaningfully contribute to strengthening the dynamic, innovative, resilient ASEAN community. And very important that now youth is identified cross-pillar under the APSC strategic plan, because in the previous ASEAN community blueprint, it has been a very specific or very siloed issue of being the responsibility of the social culture pillar. So now that there is specific mention of empowering women and youth to contribute effectively to ASEAN community building efforts, it means that there is acknowledgement that it's important to involve the women and youth into the initiatives under the political security pillar as well. The next slide, I think I'm identifying for ACC strategic plan, specifically under strategic goal 8. Again, meaningfully contribute, the same language, and the specific objective of having a resilient integrative community where youth can meaningfully contribute and participate in. A new term there coming into the document, human security, social cohesion, and strong family cohesion. I think this is much stronger formulation compared to previous blueprints where, like I said, is focusing more on education and health and well-being and voluntary work. But there it makes specific reference now, the addition of the focus on biodiversity conservation, climate action, and disaster risk reduction and disaster resilience initiatives. Other than, of course, access to decent work and creative industries and entrepreneurship. I can't remember. Okay, sorry. Turns out that was the last slide. So in this context, I think just to explain, currently, if there is any issue in ASEAN, any emerging issues, it would always be implanted or spearheaded by a particular ASEAN sectoral body. Why is that important? It's important because the ASEAN sectoral bodies are the ones who are capable of making decisions, making policies, initiating activities that will be heeded by the other ASEAN member states or by the other ASEAN sectoral bodies. Only if it is spearheaded by one particular ASEAN sectoral body can an initiative be maintained and be continuously advocated. What is unfortunate about the youth, peace, and security agenda in ASEAN is that there is no ASEAN sectoral body being the lead right now. So ASEAN IPR, as an ASEAN institute, we are not policy making, but at the moment we are the standard bearer for youth, peace, and security in the region, and we try to do our best with the resources that we have. But we are hoping that the more that we engage on this issue, the more activities that we do, the more awareness raising and sensitization that we do, this youth, peace, and security agenda in ASEAN can be adopted by the senior officials meeting on youth, by the ASEAN ministerial meeting on youth, because they are the ones who have the ability to make the right policies related to youth empowerment and youth participation in peace and security. This regional study that we just completed and launched, thank you very much, Erika, and colleagues from around the region. This YPS study is very important for ASEAN IPR, and this is why I never gave up on making sure that we finally have this study, is because we want to make this the foundation for all the work that we will do on YPS agenda in the region. There are many recommendations under the study, and that is just the start of the work. But with these recommendations, with the data, the information that we gather under this study, it's a starting point, because we believe that we cannot design anything without having the relevant data. And in the spirit of inclusiveness of YPS agenda, ASEAN IPR, or even myself, we always try to consult our youth peers on what would be the best way to do this, and what kind of initiatives would you like to see ASEAN do or ASEAN IPR do on youth, peace, and security. And we really appreciate their ideas, their contributions, because this is ultimately for them. Maybe I'll stop here for now. Thank you for your patience. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you so much, Kartika, for that overview and giving us a sense of where youth is situated in ASEAN so far, and in some ways why this study is so significant as well, right, against those kind of odds also. We're going to move on now, having had that context, for you to hear a little bit about the study itself. If you're particularly interested, we've put QR codes up around the room. You can access both the program, which has detailed bios of everyone you're going to hear from, and the study itself. So feel free to access them that way. We're going to hear now from Erika, Isabel, and Yague. Erika is a scholar practitioner on youth in emergencies and peace building. She is a young woman leader from the Philippines and is currently a PhD candidate at Griffith University. She completed her role as lead author of this study as a member of the Griffith Asia Institute, alongside two co-authors, who I'm sure you'll mention as well. Her expertise is in inclusion and youth in emergencies, peace building and disaster risk reduction. She has diverse professional backgrounds working with UNICEF, UNFPA, and served as the ASEAN UN Partnership Officer with UNDPPA DPO in Jakarta. So if you followed all of those acronyms, you'll know that Erika is very well versed in navigating the systems and processes. Before she worked there, she was an emergency responder and government elected youth councillor in the Philippines. She has a master's in peace and conflict studies from the University of Queensland, a Bachelor of Science in Community Development from the University of the Philippines, and a Youth Peace and Security Leadership Certificate from Columbia University. So impressive all around. And she's looking very human, even though she's in the last couple of months of her PhD, right? So just casually launching a report alongside your PhD as well. Over to you to introduce the study.
Yeah, thank you so much, Helen. And thank you so much, Erika, for laying the ground and contextualizing where this study actually would go to and like where it actually functions within this big ASEAN body that we've been talking about. So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yague peoples of the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today in Mianjin, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and recognize their unbroken connection to country, their care for it across the years, and I honor the reality that sovereignty was never ceded. This acknowledgement actually holds deep meaning for me, as I also come from indigenous roots in Ibanag, Northern Philippines. It represents me, a part of me where we recognize that shared strength and struggles of the Lumad and indigenous peoples across the Philippines and beyond protected land, beyond to protect the land, to protect culture, and to protect community. And in honoring the Turrbal and Yague peoples here, I also honor the wider indigenous struggles and stories that continue across Asia Pacific and the world. So these connections are actually really deeply tied to the peace and security issues that we have in the region and beyond. It reminds us that peace is beyond the existence of violence and conflict. And it is also recognizing the need for acknowledgement of those who are working towards it today, the past, and forever. So in this end, I'd like to kind of turn in terms of the ASEAN Youth Peace and Security Study. So for this study, before I go into the ASEAN lens, I'd like to talk more a little bit of the background of why do we actually have this study within the institutional setting of ASEAN. So before that, I'd like to share what are the narratives when we think about young people. We always see them as, victims who needs to be supported or perpetrators that needs to be stopped. And this kind of framing is actually what is driving us towards changing that kind of narrative, where we see young people as not peace builders, but they are actually already working in terms of peace building in the field, which we will hear from a few of them in the room later. So this framing is actually problematic because first, for several reasons. First is that there is no actual mechanisms to actually hear their voices within the spaces that we've mentioned earlier. Second, the discussion around young people, as also mentioned earlier by Kartika, is often within the frame of education and economy. While that's good, we also need to remember that there is young people's rights and political movements that are happening on the ground that needs to be recognized. Hence why maybe we should bring them in the room so that we could avoid those kinds of violent confrontations with them. And finally, it's more of also response in terms of the hard-fisted laws that's being put in place where young people are seen within the security lens, thus creating that kind of intergenerational discussion and opening that kind of opportunities for young people to be heard. So hence why we have this normative shift of the UN Security Council resolution. So this photo is actually really one of my favorite photos within the Security Council room, where all member states' hands were raised. So this Security Council resolution was forwarded by Jordan when they were part of the Security Council back then, and it was unanimously adopted. So this was actually, aside from the top-down kind of perspective of having a UN Security Council resolution, we should also acknowledge that this actually came to be because of the hard work of young people from the ground who advocated within their governments and within their adult civil society to push forward for their voices within this space. So what are the guiding principles, or what are the pillars of this Security Council resolution? So we have participation, protection, prevention, partnership, and disengagement and reintegration. So they're very similar if you're familiar of the Women, Peace and Security agenda. We see it as the older sister of the Women, Peace and of the Youth, Peace and Security agenda. So this framework, or these pillars, are actually what provided the perspective, or the commitments that we have with bringing it back to the region in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific in general. So in this spirit, these pillars actually are how this study is actually how we could see these pillars translate within the context of this regional Southeast Asia. So just for an overview, so aside from the first resolution, which is 2250, we have two other succeeding resolutions on youth, peace, and security. The next one was in 2018, 2419, which called for more youth participation in peace processes and emphasized the protection of young peace builders. And then in 2020, we have the third UN Security Council resolution, which outlined concrete steps to implement youth, peace, and security. And there's now regular reporting on the youth, peace, and security agenda that's done by the Secretary General. And of course, they do long processes where they consult member states and also youth civil society who are able to input into that UN Secretary General's report. Next one is coming next year, together with a UN Global Progress Study, which Helen and I are part of in some ways. And yeah, so as Helen mentioned, this year is actually the 10th anniversary of the YPS agenda. While it is important that there is that decade of recognition that this agenda is in place, it also reminds us that there is a lot that needs to be done within this agenda, and that from the 10 years, we're still a long way from really recognizing young people within these spaces. At the same time, there is just so much work to be done in the 10 years that not a lot of people know that there is actually this type of agenda. The work that we're doing now, especially within the professional hat, is to still brief member states that this agenda exists. Also within the spaces inside institutions, we still need to brief them. So we really thank Griffith for this opportunity to highlight this agenda within this space that we have now. And so going back to Asia, one thing that I really wanted to highlight in terms of youth, peace, and security, especially in this shrinking space of resources that we have in the humanitarian and peace building space, is that we actually don't need to work from scratch. So this is actually the kind of pull towards member states that we get them to engage in the YPS agenda, because people would think like, oh no, we need to kind of start a new agenda, find the young people. Well, the thing is, you don't need to find them because they're already at your doors. And also that there are already work being done by young people in the field that could further be amplified and elevated. There is a need to localize the YPS agenda in the field, hence why this study, which I'll introduce later, talk about what peace is for Southeast Asia, given the diversity of experiences that we have here. And then as Kartika also mentioned earlier, YPS is seen as a priority. One thing I'd like to mention in terms of that is that Australia, which is one of the dialogue partners of ASEAN, which is actually the first I found out, is one of the strategic plan of action that they have with ASEAN includes a line on youth, peace, and security. So that's actually really impressive because of all the dialogue partners, it's just two, countries, which is the UK and Australia. I worked a little bit with the UK in terms of moving forward with the agenda. So hopefully Australia follows suit. And so now going to the study. So in ASEAN, as we know, the young people have been historically engaged in the peace processes, fighting for independence in our own countries. I know in the Philippines, we really have a strong youth movement on the ground and even in institutions. And I think those are the nuances that we need to recognize when we talk about the youth peace and security agenda. So what's the purpose of this study? As Kartika mentioned, it's more to provide the practical policy and programmatic recommendations that can help ASEAN, national governments, international partners, and young people themselves work together for inclusive peace and prosperity in ASEAN. So the core of this study is really for deeper cooperation with and among youth, but also for youth within the space of institutional setting. So in terms of the methodology, we used a qualitative mixed method approach using what we call the Youth and Everyday Peace Framework. So this approach actually offers a fresh perspective when we talk about peace and conflict, which recognizes peace not only in conference room or like formal negotiations, but also the everyday lived experiences of young people, as well as recognizing their struggles, initiatives, and their resilience when it comes to peace building. So the study underwent really long process, as Kartika mentioned, years, even longer than my PhD. So it started from drawing from existing literature from ASEAN, but also building on literature coming from young people themselves. It also built on youth consultations, dialogues, and workshops held at the national and regional levels from 2017 to 2023, and a lot of them being led by young people themselves. It also incorporates insights from regional experts across the UN, civil society, and governments, and of course received a stamp of approval from young people in 2023 until the later version was received a stamp of approval from the ASEAN IPR Governing Council, who actually did the last phase of the study and went through a very thorough review process and approval. So as it stands, it is a collective effort and achievement, as mentioned by Kartika from ASEAN IPR, on how we bridge together research, policy, and the lived realities of young people. So just a little bit of timeline. So you can see, I won't go through all of it, but this just shows how ASEAN has been actually working on the youth peace and security agenda since the establishment of the resolution in 2250. Of course, there's more before the 2250 was adopted, but as we can see here, there's been a lot of work already being done. So I put the resolutions in light orange as references. In blue are youth initiative, UN initiatives. Pink is more of the civil society and youth-led efforts. There's more of that, but I just wanted to highlight the ASEAN ones, which is in dark orange, where there is a lot of work already being done, even without that strong resolution coming from the top. So yeah, just wanted to show that. So going to the findings of the study, what do young people say peace is? So it really goes beyond that perspective of, so ASEAN, I'll define first like what youth is being seen when it comes to ASEAN. So again, going back to the definition of young people often seen within the frames of demographic dividend, youth bulge. While it is important, it's again, really important to also build a stronger language around empowering young people and recognizing their agency and the right that they have to participate meaningfully in processes and in things that affect their lives. So this also actually resonates with the first YPS Global Progress Study back in 2018, where we see young people as peace dividends in addition to demographic dividends. So the YPS agenda also looks at the intersections of young people within the spaces of peace building. We need to recognize, especially in Southeast Asia, where there's really diversity of cultures, traditions, and even governments, that the intersectional approach is really important when we come to deal with young people within these spaces. So what I was about to say earlier is what the meaning of peace is for young people. So peace goes beyond the traditional definition of the absence of war or violence, but it means the protection of fundamental human rights, equal opportunities on education, gender equality, climate justice, and civic spaces. So the study would really detail everything that young people said on what peace means for them. But what really I want to highlight within this slide is that there is that intersections with other areas. You can see peace, violent extremism, gender equality, transnational crime. So all of those areas are said by young people because they work within those spaces as well. So yeah. So in the study, we also have each member state represented. So this dedicated section on ASEAN member state provides an overview of their work in the youth peace and security context, the initiatives and opportunities that we can actually build on. So by capturing the country's specific experiences, this study not only highlights national progress and challenges, but it also creates space for cross-country learning, stronger regional cooperation when it comes to youth peace and security. And then challenges and opportunities. There is a lot, but this is just a few of them that I wanted to highlight. So as mentioned earlier, there is no systematic engagement when it comes to young people's voices within the space of institutions. Second, there needs to be the awareness raising when it comes to the YPS agenda and institutionalized policies to genuinely have their inclusion. And then third, there needs to be an understanding of the growing complexity of transnational issues, especially when we talk about cybersecurity, digital surveillance, hate speech, climate risk, and all of those. And also the persistent stereotypes when we talk about young people, where again, it's always within the framework of inexperience, victims, perpetrators, and it's really very outdated and stand in the way of meaningful youth engagement. And then, of course, there's also opportunities that when we have with young people. This study offers a lot of opportunities, including those initiatives that we've seen earlier, where we can actually leverage some of those mechanisms. There's a lot of scholarship and resources and expertise already when we talk about the UN Security Council Resolution 2250, even wider within the YPS agenda. There's also a lot of partnerships. So I mentioned earlier about the 2 dialogue partners that included youth peace and security in their plan of action. Aside from that, we have other countries that are actually providing resources to advance the agenda, such as Japan, Korea, and Canada. So the study was actually supported by those countries. And then more importantly, it's more, we look at the connection of YPS with other pivotal agendas, such as the women, peace and security, preventing and countering violent extremism, and climate security. So all of this just really shows a brief of what we have in that study. And then finally, this is my last slide, recommendations. So the way that the recommendations are done in this study is that it caters to the stakeholders that young people recognize to be important within the space of peace and security. So there are specific recommendations for ASEAN, the sectoral bodies and institutions, specific recommendations for the member states, international partners, so that includes academia, civil society, international civil society, the UN, and government partners. Beyond that's included in ASEAN member states. And then youth civil society. So they also mentioned there needs to be recommendations for themselves for them to be able to reach out to more young people within this space. So I'd like to stop there because I know there'll be better opportunities to hear from the young peacebuilders themselves. And yeah, you can access the resources. We have physical copies here. And if you have any questions, we'll have, this afternoon to talk more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erika. So, next. We will now move on to our first panel where you can hear from some of the peace builders, young people involved in this. So can I invite Lynn Rose, Tito and Paul to come up, and I'll let Erika catch her breath, and then Erika, I'm going to share this session, so I'll hand it over to you.
I'll drop the slide. It's on.
All right, thank you so much. Sorry I talked a lot, but I will not talk as much in this part of the discussion because we have such an amazing panel from different diverse backgrounds where we can actually see the lived experience when we're talking about youth and peace building. So you can find their bios within the program that's on the walls, but I want to give a space for our young people to actually introduce themselves, share about their work, and discuss their experiences, especially in the amazing organizations that they're leading and initiatives that they're part of. So I'll start with Paul.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that wonderful presentation, as well as, I guess, remarkable release of this publication. A lot of hard work has gone into that, obviously, so well done on putting that together. Just a brief introduction. My name is Paul. I'm part of the ASEAN Australia Strategic Youth Partnership. So we're a non-for-profit organisation. We're registered in Australia, but we operate across Australia and Southeast Asia. Our members are based in across the region, and we have volunteers in, Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines, as well as obviously in Australia. So the work that we do, just very briefly, we focus on empowering young people, and we take the definition of youth a little bit differently. So our volunteers are all aged between 18 to 29, and we have a hard stop at 29 because we want to have that space for young people within this age group to engage with one another and to contribute. So really to train young people to engage with one another. The flagship programs that we run is our annual Young Leaders Forum. And so this year we're holding it in Cebu in the Philippines with the theme on ocean governance. So we're focusing on maritime security, maritime conservation, ocean sustainability, as well as blue economy. Last year, we had our Young Leaders Forum in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam on the theme of AI and technology. And so this year, we're focusing on ocean governance. We are funded by the Australian government through DFAT, through the ASEAN Australia Centre. So we're very grateful for that. And we have just won, start of this year, a multi-year grant to support our program. So that's kind of the brief introduction about the work that we do and kind of about a little bit about me. Outside of that, I am a full-time lawyer in technology, telecommunications, and IP and privacy. But yeah, otherwise I lead this as, this kind of voluntarily, and I must say as well, all the people involved with our organisation are volunteers, and they all have day job. They're either full-time student or have a day job. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And definitely, Paul also then mentioned that he is the COO of this organization, the ASEAN Australia organization, and that, yeah, it's really great that you mentioned that kind of double burden on young people in terms of us working for free because we feel like we need to contribute within this space. So thank you so much. Over to Tito.
All right. Thank you so much, Erika, for the opportunity. A little bit nervous because my lecture's behind. Hi, Sarah. My name is Tito Trikadafi. I'm from Indonesia. Currently, I'm doing Master of Peace and Conflict Studies and International Relations at the University of Queensland with Australia World Scholarship. I am a founder and managing director of Bastra Indonesia, Bastra ID. That's the organization that has a movement to improve literacy and socio-emotional skills of young people in Indonesia, because we believe by possessing that skills, young people can be able to solve any kind of social problems, including a religious conflict. Because as a background, I live in one of the most intolerant cities in Indonesia, namely Cilegon. There are 8,000 Christians who cannot worship properly due to a ban on building churches by the local government. I am a Muslim. and identify myself as a progressive Muslim, privileged Muslim, because yeah, I can access many things related to education. But sadly, I have many friends out there, Christians, who can worship, like what I mentioned before. In Cilegon, we also don't have the proper curriculum that can open the interfaith dialogue, because the schools tend to more homogen. The Islamic school, the Christian schools, they are rarely joining in the same dialogue. So it's really hard for them to get access for that. That's why our organization that found in 2018 have intervened and do some interventions in Cilegon through one of flagship program, namely Berembuk Card, that is the learning medium to teach young people about literacy, socio-emotional, and also negotiation skills through education sector. When we talk about the religious thing in Cilegon, it's very sensitive because they don't really open to talk about them. When I go into the school and then ask for permissions to implement this project, some schools, in Islamic schools, I got the stigma that, oh, this program will part of Christianization. When I go to the Christian schools, I also got stigma, oh, this program will be part of Islamization. Because in Berembuk Card, a card game that teach conflict resolution and also negotiation skills, we show about the various topic and various pictures related to the worship places, not only a religion related to Muslim or Christians, but also our religions and also belief that have been admitted in Indonesia. And from that game, we are trying to convince the schools that it's not about religious itself. It's about how students can be able to do the interfaith dialogue, how they can be able to have more diversity things, diversity skills in this context. Because in Indonesia, we have the civil society as a part of lesson in the school and Indonesian language lessons. We actually not directly implement this game to the school, but we are trying to connect to the school that we can integrate this game into these lessons, and you can use this as the tool to conduct the assessment in more fun ways. That's why when we implement this game, we not only bring the value of religious itself, but also have a 4 key themes that is a part of religious diversity, disability, and also gender equality. And the last one is the spirit of anti-bullying, because there's also a part of problem in the school. From that implementation, we have gathered many data that we arranged for policy recommendations to the government in Cilegon. Actually, we have presented this last year before I come to Australia. And then we proposed this not as a part and not ask the government to build the church as the worship place for Christians in Cilegon, but to ensure that Cilegon can be more tolerance in terms of can open the interfaith dialogue, and also the government also can integrate the curriculum itself, not only to teach about the homogen things, but also to teach the diversity in various ways. And one of them is through gamification itself.
Thank you so much, Tito. Again, another example of how young people are already creating changes within their communities and beyond when it comes to peace building. And now I'm handing it over to Lynn Rose.
Thank you, Erika, and everyone for the space to share. And while Erika was showing the timeline, make me also reflect, like, when did I start peace building? And made me reflect, like in retrospect, you realize like how your life sort of aligned, even if you are like brought in different spaces. But I remember in 2008, so I was, I think 13 years old at the time. So my introduction to peace building is a bit personal. So I'm from the Philippines, from the southern part of the Philippines in Mindanao, and one of our community was was attacked because of a failure of a peace agreement. So at 13, I don't know what peace agreement is. What I know of at the time was we need to leave our home and go to an evacuation site because there was an armed struggle. So that was my introduction to peace building. So it was a huge concept. I didn't know that we should be part of it. I didn't know at the time that it was something that I should be concerned about at that age. And that sort of opened a window to me. Like I started volunteering. I started being part of there was mentioned about volunteerism. Like there were a lot of spaces at the time where I was able to meet young people, collaborate with them, do projects with them. And then when I started in the uni and I started my academic work, I was drawn to the topic. I was drawn to the theme. Because it was very close to me personally. It was very close to my community. And I feel like I had a very strong grip of it because of that personal experience. And I think in this conversation, I'm bringing two hats. One is that I'm part of a young women network in the Philippines. It's Young Women for Peace in the Philippines. So I'm going to explain a little bit about why young women and why so very centered in that demographic. One is I'm a young woman myself. I think I would like to think that our network was born at the intersection of women, peace and security and youth peace and security agenda. In 2018, there was a workshop in Manila. We were invited, and it was talking about women, peace and security. These are big words, so we're doing peace building work since I was 13, but we didn't hear about these things until I was invited in that formal space. And then I was able to meet a lot of young people in the country doing peace building work in different ways and in different capacities. So we thought of might create a network and do things together. So that's how the network was created. And of course, it was facilitated and initiated by the Global Network of Women Peace Builders. And I'd like to emphasize that because the mentorship really helped. Because if you are a young informal network, sometimes it's very you feel insecure when you go to these formal spaces and get invited to speak and in a language that's so formal and detached sometimes to our experiences. And that sort of mentorship created a space for us to flourish and created a space for us as well to do projects. So our strategy is capacity building leadership program. And during the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim, the creation of BARM, I'm not sure if you've heard, it is an autonomous region in the southern Philippines created by the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which is a product of a long peace process. So during that time, it's very institutional, the conversations around it. And when the plebiscite was ongoing, a lot of young people in Mindanao didn't understand what BOL is to begin with. So what we did is create a platform, a community discussion, an informal discussion that has a very low barrier that we can talk among ourselves. What does it mean to me personally? And what does it mean to my community if the BARM will be created? So these are some of the strategies that we mentioned maybe towards the end. In some spaces, I would also share some activities or some programs that we've done. Another hat that I'm bringing in is I'm also doing my PhD. And this is what I meant by sort of aligning your life in retrospect, you realize, because that work also ushered me to the PhD program or the PhD work that I'm doing now. So I'm looking at the concept of digital peace building. I'm looking at how young women are using social media in support of the peace process. And you might wonder, social media, right? And it's a lot. There's a lot of buzz around social media right now, like banning social media. That social media is all bad. And these are kind of really interesting conversations. And what I wanted to highlight in my project is that in the case of Mindanao, there are young women are using it to support the peace process and to push forward their agenda. And they're using the platform vernaculars. That's a very academic, but platform features. Can I see the hands who has TikTok here? Yeah, I see a few hands. Facebook, probably you're familiar. So they're using, like for example, for TikTok, get ready with me kind of templates or a day in my life. Or you can see young women doing makeups or getting ready for a day, and then talking about how to vote in BARM, how the voting structure in BARM is different from the national voting system. So you may see that this is frivolous, this is unserious. How can you make this political? But in my project, I attempt to build a case that it is important, that the concept of everyday peace that Erika was mentioning earlier extends in the digital platforms. And this is something that we cannot just easily dismiss because we are unfamiliar, because we don't understand what's going on in there. So I hope to invite a discussion that YPS is in social media too, and it's a space, so it could be a generative conversation around how can we nurture more buy-in and more ownership of YPS in the digital space. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Lynn Rose. And Lynn Rose mentioned about GNWP, and we have Soda on the line who will be speaking later in the second panel. So you could really see that kind of connection of intergenerationality and mentorship there. But since Lynn Rose is already on a roll, let me go back to you in terms of a question. So the study highlights the intersections within YPS. We talked about gender equality, preventing countering violent extremism, and like the general sustainable peace agenda within the region. So how can these cross-cutting themes be meaningfully integrated in the YPS agenda, especially you mentioned about the digital space as well? And how can young people have ownership, and what does it look like to drive this integration at the national, regional, and even in community?
Thanks, Erika. Bit of a difficult question, a lot to unpack, but I'll try. So I mentioned that my Soda is Sophia, who was also speaking after, is part of our network as well. So shout out. So the things that I'm sharing is she's part of it as well. So I think one thing that we've learned in women, peace, and security is that women is not homogenous, and same with young people. They're not homogeneous. That's why the more people on the table, the better, because we'll hear different perspectives. We'll hear different stories and different ways they're impacted by conflict. Some, my fellow panelists mentioned about climate, like religion, and all these sort of cross-cutting themes. And in our experience, because we work primarily with young women, age and gender, if it intersects as well, it creates a specific experience also with young women in conflict space. And sometimes we get subsumed to the bigger umbrella category that young women is under women or young women is under youth, and sometimes they don't get the same attention that they should. And if you are a young woman in a very patriarchal context, your challenges are unique, and also like and sometimes interventions are sort of like homogeneous, like in terms of addressing youth in general or women in general. And if you are a grant giver, for example, so if it's women, it's sort of like tick the box that young women are there. So there's no specific attention of what young women really needs in the community. So that's what we are trying to focus on in our organization. So I remember in one of our projects in BARM, where we asked a young woman, like, what is youth for you? And she said that so long as you're not married, you're youth. So regardless of age, right? And another young woman as well, that we have a conversation during a workshop. I said that, what is a young person for you? And she shared that because she got married early, because child marriage and early marriage in this region, though it is prohibited by law, it's still very, like, it's still rampant in that sense, because a lot of cultural and norms that you really have to change, it doesn't change overnight. So, and she said that because I married early, I feel insecure when I am in spaces where we do youth-related work, because even if I qualify in age, I feel like because I'm married, my marital status doesn't really make me qualify to the program. So this is what I'm trying to illustrate a concrete example of how if we really be intentional or have intersectional we are in addressing challenges of young people on the ground. I think these are considerations that we need to take into place. Another example is that we have a lot of programs that we engage young women, and some of them are married. And when we invite them to workshops, they cannot go to the workshops if their husbands are not with them. So this is just one example. And if you're doing a programming and budgeting in a very institutional sense, it needs to be in the budget, right? And how could you explain to the funder that you have additional participants because your participants cannot come to the place where you hold, the workshop? So these are very practical examples, but has consequences if we lose sight of these kinds of particularities that we have in the communities, especially in the context that I work with. So that explains a lot why we focus on young women, because of the double burden that they have to experience and go through in trying to participate in informal spaces. And that's one of the reasons as well that I focus on young women in social media study, because sometimes these get ready with me, like what I said, sometimes it's considered unserious, frivolous. It's just they are just vain sometimes. Some people would call them, but I'm trying to make a case that this is a political action because they're not in spaces where informal spaces where young people should be. So they are creating their own space with their own strategies to be heard and to be part of the discussion and to be part of the peace agenda in the region. So I think another question that you mentioned, Erika, is that let's see. Ownership, yeah. I think making them understand what YPS is and bringing it home, and sometimes we say put the price tag on it sometimes, because this is sometimes the language that we used in making them understand what it is and how it plays out in the everyday life. Sometimes the disconnect is there. So I think engaging more young people nurtures that sort of ownership. And we've seen that when we did community discussions during the plebiscite of the Bangsamoro Organic Law. And the news media has covered it, but when we went to the communities and asked them, do you know what BOL is? And they said that they don't. And these are people that, these are young people that we expected to vote during that time. So these creating those spaces and supporting and investing in them, I think is very important. Not just assuming that when there is a policy in place, it would then translate to reality, because sometimes it doesn't. So
thank you so much for sharing, Ruth. And definitely, a lot of people also see YPS as a tool, and it doesn't really define the work that they're doing in a way that you need to impose youth peace and security as something that young people should do, because young people are already doing it. It's more of the institutional language that they can use as a tool to legitimize their voices within these spaces that don't understand the work that young people are doing. So thank you so much for raising those points. And now going to Tito. So we've seen that there are gaps and in the study that were mentioned. So what are the kinds of resources, mentorship, or in terms of partnership from governments, academia, civil society that are most urgently needed by young people to sustain and strengthen youth-led peace efforts such as your effort and also beyond the Southeast Asia region?
All right. Like what Erika has mentioned before, that young people are already working on youth peace and security. We have many best practices related to that. And also you mentioned about the 5 value related to participation, protection, kind of like that. And I want to amplify 3 value on it. The first, it's really important to engage youth and also make the meaningful participation of youth in terms of youth peace and security. Because in Indonesia, I would say I have joined to some of youth council that have been conducted by some international and also national organization. And sometimes youth participation is just a part of tokenism. Youth just a part of symbol, just a role where the organization can look like more inclusive. It is not the thing that youth needed now. Really important to ensure that every organization, especially ASEAN, also to uplift the spirit of anti-tokenism, how to actually youth also can engage meaningfully in every single participation, including in decision making. Because at the end, when the youth is just being token, their participation is not meaningful enough, and their perspective, their opinion is only considered in the forum, but in the decision-making process, their perspective is not be considered. And second, about the partnership, I would say many organizations in ASEAN have agreed best practices in terms of peace movement. For example, I would say PeaceGen as the organization in Indonesia, they have the curriculum, namely 12 peace value that have been used in many institutions in Indonesia, in private sector and also public sector. In terms of this, I think it's really important for ASEAN also uplift this kind of partnership to maximizing the existing best practices. When you have the same objective and there are many curriculum, for example, that have access, I think it is not matter for you to build a new curriculum because it's more effective to use the one that already settled and ready. That's why maximizing the existing best practice is really important. Besides that, about partnership, many young people in Indonesia, I would say context in Indonesia because I have worked there, many organizations still hard to access the grant or funding. They have the idea, they have a real spirit and intention to solve any kind of problem related to conflict, but they lack on funding. It's really crucial for the youth to get the grant access, but at the same time, the organization that gives this kind of funding also need to consider that the bureaucratic process, because for youth-led organization, many of them are not registered in the national level, but their movement is trusted. I think when it comes to the funding process, give access grant, I have worked in Indica Foundation. That's one of the corporate social responsibility in Indonesia that giving grant for many organizations that conduct the peace movement and also tolerance intervention in Indonesia. They actually divided into some categories: the micro grant, and also the medium grant, and also the big grant. For accessing the micro grant, the organization should not be registered in the national level because my corporation can monitor their activity in a good way, and it's also a great invest for them to start their action in the ground level. Because at the end, if the youth has many idea and also intention to solve the problem that happen related to conflict, but they don't get access related to funding, it's really really hard for them to do that. And the last one about protection. My friend has delivered the intervention in the United Nations related to the indigenous conflict that happened in Papua. But a few years ago, she has been killed after delivering the intervention. in this context, I would say ASEAN as partnership bodies need to collaborate with the government and also youth to do, again, meaningful participation to ensure the protection. Because at the end, when you talk and do movement about peace, tolerance to solve the conflict that happen in ASEAN especially, it is really sensitive and you are in risk. That's why in this process, I think when we talk about protection, the pentahelix collaboration also should be integrated in this process to not only see the protection come from the government itself, but also come from in a pentahelix collaboration in a holistic way.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tito, and really powerful story that you've shared. And definitely that last aspect of protection is always the one being forgotten when we talk about young people, because those kinds of things that even in online, like the hate speech that you're working on in your organization, translate into offline violence, as we've seen in different cases. So with building on that in terms of like looking for protection accountability, I'm handing over to Paul. As ASEAN and its partners advance the YPS agenda, how can young people and institutions hold each other accountable to ensure that the study's commitments, the recommendations are translated into tangible change at the community, national, and regional levels?
Thank you. I think I would start off just by echoing what Tito mentioned earlier. So ASIC, our organisation, we're mostly funded by the Australian government through DFAT. So I think for us, in order for us to run events, including capacity building activities, and again, as I mentioned, our flagship program is our Young Leaders Forum, which every year we get around 30 to 50 people to come together at a forum and to discuss a particular topic. That requires funding, and that again, we're all here doing this work as a volunteer. And so a lot of that, we really rely on corporate support. So our partners that provide either in-kind contribution or actual funding. And our primary support comes from the Australian government. And so I really thank the Australian government for doing that, because that enables us to do what we do. The Indonesian embassy has also supported us last year in our program for the Indonesian delegates in Ho Chi Minh City. So we rely on our network partners to make things happen. In terms of what we actually do to ensure that, to promote this youth peace security agenda, really that capacity building, allowing young people to come together and have that dialogue, right? Because that's the whole premise of our program, is really getting young people across the region to come together and to discuss issues that affect the region. And so in one of the ways in which we can enable young people to do that is to empower them to do that. And what do I mean by empowering young people? Everyone has a different idea of what empowerment looks like. In the past, I've also been involved in a few grassroots movements back in Malaysia around promoting democracy and all that. One of our programs that I was involved in, this is not part of ASID, this is part of another organisation that I volunteered with, it's called Undi 18, which is a movement to ask the government to reduce lower the age of voting to, I think you've touched on in the report as well, and great for doing that, to lower the voting age to 18, from 21 to 18. And so the government made that commitment, but then in 2020, with the pandemic and everything, we went through a period of political instability. We had 3 prime ministers from 3 different coalitions in the period of 3 years. And that put a hold on the implementation of that constitutional amendment. So then what we did as a group, we took the government to court, right? So we took the government to court. We had lawyers that were acting for us pro bono, and the result of that was we won the case. The court said you have to implement this constitutional amendment. But when I heard that news from the Election Commission that they were going to postpone that for another year or so, I actually released a statement to say that this is not right. They have to fix this wrong. It's been decades long, and young people deserve a voice, and we should be heard. And so by empowering, so I'm thinking things of like, actually letting young people know that there are avenues that they can pursue to bring change, whether through the, process or going through the court process or other channels. Young people need to elevate their voices and to be heard and to have a seat at the table. And this is also timely because Malaysian Prime Minister yesterday at the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly said, and I'll quote him, the ASEAN leaders need to shut up and listen to young people, which I absolutely echo. I do think that young people deserve to have a voice. We have a stake in this, and we need to be heard. As well, so to hold institutions accountable, young people as well as organisations, we need to take ownership of the things that we do. We need to be proactive. And one thing that I kind of think about, why am I so passionate about all these things? Because we are more idealistic, maybe, but also because we have time to do all these things. I think the harder, the older you get, when you have family, all that, kind of don't have time to do that. It will become, I don't know, maybe something else that you can do in your free time. But when you're young, you're idealistic, you're proactive. And the other thing that I'll also say about young people was that I think they tend to not feel content with the status quo. So we always want to see change. We want to see things our way. And that in part is also due to the fact that, we grew up in this generation that people would call digital natives, right? So we, grew up with technology, we understand kind of, how things work, and this is what we're used to, and, here's how we want it to be done, for example. And so I think it's very important for leaders, and so like you see like the Malaysian Prime Minister saying that the leaders to elevate voices of young people and to make sure that young people have a seat at the table. And as part of what we do as ASEP, as an organisation, I think we strongly believe in youth leadership. So a lot of times we hear people say, youth or young people are the leader of tomorrow. We feel that we are the leaders of today. And so we think that young people need to be at the table. And when we engage with young people, so this is to all the public sector or the governments or, higher level agencies, it shouldn't be tokenistic, which is what Toddy mentioned earlier as well. It really should be meaningful contribution or meaningful participation and allowing young people to have their voices heard. And, just to sum it up there as well, like with the new social media ban in Australia, which is the first in the world, young people should be engaged in that process as well as part of the consultation. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the studies show that about 80%, 70 to 80% of Australians actually support the legislation. But to what extent young people were actually engaged in that process, I'm not sure, because I wasn't involved in that process. I think there are merits, there are things there that, that may warrant some scrutiny as well, right? Because just banning it outright may not be the best outcome, considering that young people these days, we hop onto the internet to learn things. We hop onto YouTube to learn things. I acknowledge that there are harmful content out there, a lot of illegal content out there, targeting young people, algorithm targeting young people, causing harm to young people. That all needs to be addressed. But, the process of lawmaking needs to be inclusive. Young people that are affected by this legislation must be consulted, and that process should be more robust, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paul. And we are running out of time, and this is such an amazing panel. Like, I can't even express in terms of you see where young people are in governments, in the ground, in UN entities talking, and we could see the different levels in which young people are already there. It's more of the recognition of young people within these spaces as well. So I'd like to give a few more minutes in terms of key takeaways. If there are questions, we have a 5-minute break, and also we have reception later, so you get the chance to talk to this amazing panel that we have today. So over to Paul first, and then Tito, and then Lynrose.
Just major takeaways. The key takeaways that I would say is that young people should be more proactive. We need to be driven, and you need to be grounded in realities as well. But you need to know what you want to achieve, and partner with people, organisations that are like-minded, because that's where you have that ability to kind of work together with the community to create change. And I think as part of ASEAN, what we do is really bringing young people together because we believe in networking. We believe in bringing young people together. When you put young people together in a room, they can get things done. And we believe that when people are engaged with one another, we can solve issues affecting the region. Not just, from a perspective of capacity building, but also knowledge sharing. And I think we value the diversity of thought. I think that is also very important. People from different cultural backgrounds, they come together, they have different perspectives on things. And I think that's very helpful. I think you want to be inclusive. You want to allow young people to have that space to express their views.
Thank you so much, Paul. Tito?
I value impact in project management in terms of peace movement. When it comes to the youth, I believe that the youth need to be supported by many organizations and also many actors in terms of government, ASEAN, private sector, public sector, because at the end, if you come to the ground level, you can see that many young people have agreed intention to solve any kind of problem related to the conflict, but they need to be supported and still lack in terms of many things, like what I said before, in terms of funding, in terms of how they can be trained in terms of the project management skills. So I think the collaboration and meaningful participation, it's not only about the youth itself, but also how the cross-sector, including government and also private sectors also can be involved in terms of peace, youth peace and security.
Thank you so much, Tito. And Rose?
I think I would join them in the funding bit because I think that's has been like a problem as well in our organization. And Katrina, one of our colleagues, like they wrote a paper that says like fund us like you want us to win. And I think fund us like you want us to thrive. Because I think that's also like we keep talking about examples of young people doing this and that, and this assumption that our time is infinite, that our expertise is always free. And I think these are young people who's also feeding their families, young people who are caregivers in their homes. They need resources as well. And to bring them into a fancy hotel and not compensate with their expertise is something that I don't promote and support. And I think when we invite people as experts, we also compensate that expertise. Doesn't have to be like material thing, doesn't have to be money all the time. It could be like resources for the organization to be sustained and for the organizations as well, despite of legal registrations, because we're not registered in the national level as well. Like regardless of that, if the work delivers at the kind of objective that you want in the community, that should be like a baseline of trusting which organizations to engage. And I would also like to point out gatekeeping in terms of funding as well. Sometimes institutional level, the organizations that usually brought into the table are the big ones, and the little ones, the little organizations that usually are led by young women, led by LGBTQIA, are not on the table. So these kinds of things needs to be in place. And I think mentorship is very, very important. I'm so happy in this room. Like it's not just young people here in the room, which is I think a big win. Because sometimes when I talk about young people, it's always young people as well cheering you. It's good to have these kinds of this community, because I think it is an intergenerational agenda and it is an intergenerational job, and we need to be in together. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panel. Yep, we'll have a 2-minute break and then we'll go to the next panel. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We need to talk to you.
Oh, you lost.
I'm Brendan. Would you like my seats? I think you can start.
No, I'm actually only staying for a few days.
Yes, we have our meeting afterward.
So, because of that.
What?
All the resources. Hey, how are you?
Hello. Here's the name. How are you?
Methodology, but sure, until 2 weeks into the future, and then I have to fight it. I get online here, but like 2 or 3 scholars that perform very inspirational, basically saying. It's not.
I can understand. Like, I'm so glad to see you. It was actually me.
Yes. What I did tell you that.
He works, but that's why.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. I feel that's a train and that's catch up. Oh, I'll bring her. Be smart. Yeah. Any comments? It's like
I've been
watching. Don't worry. I'll bring. I hope I see you in a very.
It's 1979, yeah? Oh, wait.
Back, do you want ASEAN IPR? Do you want the UN Women one, or do you want the generic ones? Oh, yeah.
I think you need a panel for all of you. I'll take a picture.
Sure. Yeah,
We never learn. Just gonna grab some. Yeah.
you were supposed to be here.
In our house.
You need to have those skills.
I mean, that's why you were supposed to be here.
But don't worry, I know that there are some space hours. From the climate Washington.
Next step.
Thank you.
I don't know. And I'm working with my supervisor.
It's like definitely.
Get a photo of everyone. You get it? Yes.
You'll see him.
Very conscious of. It's so lovely to see you. How are you? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're all.
I washed my hair this morning. Put makeup on for once. Brendan said you've retired.
You're here. You're for the mission. This was fun.
Thank you for coming
along. Excellent. Yeah. All right, connecting them. Yeah.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
Erika, shall we do the last panel so that we can?
Yeah, it did depend on.
Pretty much. That's what we do.
To one of these.
Let's start.
Yeah. A pleasure to see you again.
I have a bit of fresh air.
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna return to my chair. So.
Okay.
Thanks for having me across your work with Steve McCarthy. I think he was just talking about your work. That's why I got it mixed up.
I do know Steve.
Yeah.
So we come back for the last panel, please.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
You too. Been in this earlier. So much.
Thanks.
We're looking for Sophie and Soda. Would you like to just try on the flags to make sure we can?
Indonesia.
Yeah.
Oh, really? It will be maybe non-video calculator.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So are you coming?
Cheap and expensive.
Billboard.
Yun lang man. Kaya nga sabi ko, dapat mas sinabi ko. Para sa kanila nakita. Thank you for you know.
Good job. From my meetings.
What's your name?
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Helen. Can you hear us?
Another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like,
I can hear you in the middle.
Okay.
Helen, can you hear us? Okay. I can hear you in the middle.
Ya, saya mengajar di Griffith. Marketing. Business school ya.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I teach social marketing. So
There's some.
sustainability. So,
all right. Hello, everyone again. We've all had a little opportunity to shake it out after you've sat for 90 minutes to listen. We have one more fabulous panel before we break. There is, for people in the room, a reception afterwards with some snacks. Things. So please do stay around and plenty of opportunities to catch up. And for those online, I hope that you have good snacks with you while you're listening along to us today. And thanks for joining us. So our last panel today, what we wanted to do, having heard from young people who in various capacities are working for peace and security across the region, we wanted to put that in conversation with other themes and issues that are significant to the region at present. So we've called the panel Cross-Cutting Issues of Regional Peace and Security. And just like the previous panel, you can find full bios of our three fabulous speakers in the program as well. But very briefly, let me just highlight each of them. And we're very grateful for technology to allow them to join us here and put us in conversation with regional partners as well. So first up, we have Sophia Diane C. Garcia, or SODA, who is a program coordinator for Asia and the Pacific at the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders, GNWP. We also have Haja Prandeepa, or Deepa, who is a program officer at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. UNODC, no, I'm gonna get it. UNODC. But I'm going to try it. If it doesn't turn into a word you can say. And we also excitingly we heard from Erika before as the author of the report, but we're also hearing from one of the other co-authors of the report, Mrudul Upadhyay, who is a youth political participation and youth peace and security coordinator at UNDP Asia Pacific. So we have three fabulous speakers who are going to bring their extensive wisdom to this conversation. And we've got about 20 minutes to do this. So I'm very excited to, I guess, first turn. I want to contextualize the study and its focus on young people with other kinds of linkages to issues in the region. So the study, as Erika kind of pointed, identifies the fact that there are strong linkages between youth and other kinds of issues like women, peace and security, like preventing and countering violent extremism, transnational crime, climate security. So Soda, I would like to go to you first to ask, from your organisational perspective, is there one of these in particular that provides a strong entry point for advancing youth peace and security in ASEAN, and how are you already seeing it being put into place?
Thank you very much, Helen, for that question. And hi, everyone. I'm Soda Garcia from the Global Network of Women Peace Builders. A little background about our organization is that
We are a coalition of over 100 organizations across Africa, Asia and the Pacific, Latin America, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, South Caucasus, and the Middle East and Arab world. And our members are local and national women's rights organizations and other civil society groups from conflict and crisis affected communities who share the belief that equality for women means peace for all. Across our region here in the ASEAN, women, youth, and children continue to bear disproportionate burdens from militarization, displacement, and fragile peace processes and negotiations. Hence, I think the answer to Helen's question is that the Women, Peace, and Security agenda is definitely an entry point for GNWP in advancing the youth, peace, and security in the ASEAN region. The synergies between these two agendas, along with the sustaining peace resolutions, are important to the work that we do as a network, and that these agendas emphasize the vital role of women and young women and youth in realizing peace not just within their communities, but also as global citizens. By using these international instruments, women and young women and youth are enabled to transform their roles from victims of conflict and humanitarian crisis to active agents of peace. The resolutions promote diverse women and young women's voices and meaningful participation in political decision making, allowing them to shape their present and the future of the next generations. So how does that look like in GNWP's work across the ASEAN region? First is through amplifying women's voices and youth's voices. An example, and Lynn Rose already touched on that a while ago, where we actually met, is through the Young Women Leaders for Peace program that is present not just here in the Asia and the Pacific region, but also across different parts of the world. And it embodies a resolute commitment to empowerment and resilience, igniting transformative change in communities worldwide. Across these diverse nations, this program serves as a catalyst aiming arming young women with skills such as numeracy, literacy, and public speaking, skills that help develop their confidence needed to emerge as visionary leaders. Additional examples include, and it was mentioned in the previous panel, in terms of the importance of project management workshops and awareness raising sessions on women's rights to build leadership and advocacy skills of refugees and to address root causes of conflict and promote peace. Overall, these promote pathways that foster a new generation of peace builders who actively champion women's rights and gender equality. And just to kind of flesh out what Lynn Rose shared a while ago in the context of the Philippines, the Young Women Leaders for Peace led community youth discussions during the 2019 national midterm elections, which is also simultaneously in the lead up to the Bangsamoro Organic Law ratification. And fast forward to now, through that organic law, it created the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. And we believe that young people, young women contributed to that win, which is a product of decades of negotiations in the peace process of the Philippines. And it was also cited in the first report of the UN Secretary General on 2250 to the UN Security Council. And now that the peace process is moving forward, we are also anticipating the forthcoming elections here in the Philippines for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, where YWL Philippines are also leading and organizing campaigns in terms of how do we vote wisely, who are the leaders that we should vote for, and how can we make these leaders accountable, not just before the elections, but all throughout whoever wins the said position. Another thing that I'd like to share is that in terms of building bridges of understanding. So beyond the Philippines, part of GNWP's initiatives is creating safe and brave spaces by organizing dialogue sessions to foster mutual understanding between, for example, young refugees and young members of host communities in Southeast Asia. These sessions not only raise awareness of the challenges of refugees, but also mobilize action to advocate for their rights at local, national, regional, and global spaces. Through our efforts, we have strengthened their leadership skills that promoted social cohesion among youth and increased awareness of refugees issues, driving tangible changes in attitudes and inspiring participants to take nonviolent action within their communities to support refugee rights and inclusion. And finally, one of our recent initiatives is training young Southeast Asian leaders to be part of our diplomacy skills workshop, where they had increased knowledge on diplomacy mechanisms within UN and ASEAN and developed strategies to address conflicts, especially those impacting marginalized groups like the Rohingyas, Burmese, and Karens. This workshop also became a platform for young people to engage in an intergenerational conversation with diplomats working in the region and building solidarity with fellow youth. So just to summarize this one, these examples depict the disproportionate impact of various forms of violence, such as armed conflict on women, young women, and youth, and therefore working together to address their urgent needs benefited both groups and their local communities. Their joint advocacy on conflict demands through mutually reinforce their demands. And through these initiatives, the women and youth we have reached became more motivated to participate in shaping their communities or being part of the decision-making processes that will impact them in the long run. Hence, it's very important that we do not treat the women peace and security and youth peace security agenda as two different agendas, because at the end of the day, there are synergies that we need to recognize, that we need these legal instruments or institutional mechanisms to help advance our advocacies. And these resolutions aren't created to make wars or crises safer for women and youth. These are created to make sure that women and youth are at the forefront as active agents of peace in preventing conflict and crisis from happening again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Soda. There's a spontaneous applause in the room for you, so you know you can't see the audience. Thank you. I think that's so important to connect the ways in which the agendas support each other and the ways in which you can leverage these different agendas for collective benefit, not just for young people, but for women and for other populations as well. I'd like to go to Dippa next to ask the similar question about, from your perspective, from the work you do, how do you see cross-cutting issues intersecting with and providing opportunities to advance youth peace and security? Hope you're on mute still, Dippa.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Helen, and thank you so much, everyone, Soda and Ridul and Erika and everyone, so inviting me on this very important forum. So my name is, I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Hardi Pranadipai, and I work with the UNODC in Jakarta. I've also had the privilege of working previously with, and until now currently, with the young people in Indonesia through the Indonesian Coalitions on Youth Peace and Security, or Kami Damai. And in regard to your questions about when we talk about the cross-cutting issue for advancing the YPS agenda in ASEAN, and there are many simple entry points. Of course, one of those Sophia already mentions, but in my personal, no, in my organization and also my experience, the intersections between the PVE and the cybercrime can be also one of the points that can be seen, and in particular. In my previous work, including with the youth network with Kamidamai, I witnessed how online spaces are increasingly being misused, whether for radicalizations, online recruitment, or creating fragmented networks that still manage to influence vulnerable young people. And today, cyberspace is the new front line, and it doesn't stop just at extremism, and it's becoming an equally big concern. So young people are often caught up in online scams, gambling, trafficking in persons, and even another form of transnational organized crimes. And this isn't just about the victims; it's also being targeted as a perpetrators or money mules, and because they are digitally savvy and eager to find opportunities. And that there's another layer to this, like cyber issues also connected to financial freedom and also freedom expressions. We know many young people are trying to build futures through startups, digital platforms, and cryptocurrencies to be financially freedom. But this ambition is positive, but it also comes with risk like scams, fraud, and money laundering. On the flip side, these young people at the same time also advocating for justice, transparency, and accountability towards the government when they are speaking up against corruptions, mobilizing solidarity across borders, and demanding more integrity in governance. And there is where the YPS agenda can really plug in, helping young people to recognize risk, protect their rights, and they channel their energy into positive, resilient digital activisms. For example, like when ASEAN member states will meet in Hanoi next month or to sign the cybercrime conventions, it will be a milestone, but it's equally important that young voices are part of the conversations because they are the ones that are living in these online spaces every single day. So that's my entry point about this discussion, so about the intersections between the CVE and also with the cybercrime issues these days, and how transnational organized crimes really involve young people these days, and how the young people as well in Southeast Asia as a peer can also do part of it. So I just laid it that. That's all for the starting, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dipa. And I think that this is so important and actually goes back to what Kartika was sharing with us at the start about the different spaces and the ways in which young people are trying to make things happen in the region, which often involves online presence. And there's some risks, and we can connect these kind of agendas to best address them and give young people the tools as well, right, to participate safely and effectively also. I would like to go now to Murudal, and as I introduce him, I'm just going to double check because he's on the screen, but it's frozen on our screen here. Not on your screen though, so hopefully the sound will work and I'll get the video up as I start speaking. But Murudal, Soda and Dipa have both pointed to kind of cross-cutting issues and ways in which the YPS agenda can be kind of leveraged. But often, as we know, and as some of our youth panelists in the previous session spoke about, young people are treated as tokens, they're treated as beneficiaries. So I'm curious, from your extensive experience, your organisation's experience of working with young people, what approaches you found most effective to position youth as partners and leaders, particularly when we're talking about trying to connect them into these spaces that perhaps we don't see young people as participating in. So over to you, Murudal.
Thanks, Helen. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. So, hi colleagues, this is Mridul. I'm joining from India, but I support the regional team of UNDP Asia Pacific. What I will be sharing will be the experience of our regional team, because our country teams have been also doing a lot around youth peace and security, be it in Philippines, Indonesia, and in other regions and other countries as well. As Kartika and Erika were mentioning, the youth peace and security agenda in the region is seen from a very integrated approaches with an integrated lens, and that's why we are also trying to get start seeing into this positioning of youth as partners and leaders into that integrated space itself. So things will change over the period, and I guess we need to find the specific avenues and specific opportunities for young people to position as partners, position as leaders, and I guess that will open more spaces for young people to become partners and leaders in specific peace processes, peace building negotiations, and in general peace building processes. So with that idea, I can share three things where how we have been trying to do. One is we are moving ahead in the call for youth participation. So the first pillar of youth peace and security agenda is about participation. We always advocate for that there should be more participation of young people. Now, instead of just asking for a seat at the table, we are collecting evidences on what is changing because of youth participation when they are actually getting a seat. So this is how we are trying to work, where along with that, we are also doing an appreciative inquiry. So one is we are trying to collect the evidence, but at the same time, we are doing an appreciative inquiry, and we are trying to see what is working for young people who have been able to get the access to decision-making avenues. Because that appreciative inquiry is resulting into identifying specific strength, strategies, and resources that we can further work on, and we can also bring our partners on board for that, so that we focus more on what is working for young people. We already know there are a lot of challenges and barriers for young people's participation and they being positioned as partners and leaders. So that's one way how we are doing, creating evidences and then doing appreciative inquiry in this space. The second thing we are trying to do is we are trying to formalize and institutionalize youth engagement in decision making. So far, we have seen that a lot of ad hoc participation is happening. Whenever we feel a need of engaging young people, we include them. But then the next generation of young people need to do their own advocacy to find access to those decision-making spaces. So yes, in many countries we have youth commissions, youth councils, youth parliaments. But then how formally are they included in decision making? That's what we are trying to identify, and that's what we are trying to build, like creating those like specific formalized institutionalized spaces for youth engagement in decision making. And third is we are trying to support and promote youth-led civic tech innovations in the region by organizing different hackathons and scale-up events. So young people already are creating civic engagement opportunities, and when they are able to mobilize so many young people, so many other like in general citizens and community, then their credibility increases. Decision makers start seeing them as credible partners and leaders. So we are trying to raise this youth credibility and youth profile in order to really increase the value of like creating the value that young people actually bring to the table. So that has been three different ways how we have been trying to do. Um, uh, there is a lot that we can talk about in this, and it will take some time in what is working and what is not working. But definitely, the things that have been uh, going on, we really need to identify specific things and test them, pilot them as early as possible, learn from them, and try to keep creating these new approaches of positioning youth as partners and leaders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Myrtle. And there's so much importance in what you're saying about institutionalizing it, requiring the institutions to get on board, but also to learn from what is being tried and what continues to be tried in order to continue to get better and better at this. And I think this is the interesting moment for the study to come out, because it gives us that kind of platform to kind of try and leverage some of that work and to push it forward into spaces where perhaps we haven't talked about it before. We're a little bit over time, but we have such fabulous panelists that I just want to offer a very quick opportunity to each of them to give us one key takeaway or one key way in which you and your organisation are working, I guess, towards YPS, or how institutions can best support young people across the region. Shall we go in reverse order this time? I'll go back to Myrtle first.
Sure. So I see the study has really amazing recommendations, and it will be great to see like work happening on all of them. Specifically, like having a working group, creating a regional action plan, and that's something resonate well with us. We would like to support from our spaces, but yeah, we are facing a significant uncertainty currently in all the global development space, including our team, the regional team. So we have identified other spaces to integrate YPS agenda in, be it in inclusive governance, PCBE, or climate security initiatives. That's there, and there is also a YPS movers program to help young people that we have created so that young people themselves can raise awareness about youth peace and security issues in their own community. I'll share more details later about it on the chat. But this is how we are trying to take some of the recommendations forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Myrtle. And I think, I mean, there's definitely a lot happening, and in this particular context where it's so uncertain, it's more important than ever that we keep talking about and highlighting those things. Dipper, for you, what's one key takeaway or one key thing you're doing looking ahead?
Yes. And at the end of the day, we have with the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, we've been working with youth across the region under different platforms that serves as an umbrella program to support their role in tackling this transnational organized crimes and protecting the safe online spaces. This includes raising awareness on scams, money mules, online exploitations, and non-consensual intimate image sharing, or NCII, which is an emerging threat these days within this region. But beyond awareness, we also work hand in hand with the member states in the ASEAN to develop the guidance, capacity building programs, research reports, and also technical assistance. Our goal is just to ensure the youth spaces remain safe, align with human rights principle, and to equip young people with the right tools to fight corruptions, cybercrime, and also contribute to peaceful atmosphere within the peace building within the region and in this country. And it's not just about cyber crimes. We're also strengthening the youth engagement in PCVE, especially to protect women and children and to make sure that everything is consistent with both ASEAN Action Plan and also national action plans. So if we want the YPS agenda in ASEAN to thrive, we need to treat youth as equal partners, not in just peace and security field, but also in shaping how we face the digital and transnational challenges of today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepa. And I think that capacity building and training both ways is incredibly important as well. And last but very much not least, Soda, one key takeaway that you want people to have, or one key thing that you're doing as part of GNWP.
Yes, so as informed by our experiences working with different women and youth in all their diversities, for GNWP to advance the women peace and security and youth peace and security agendas, governments, civil society, and international organizations such as the ASEAN or in the UN must collaborate closely with women, youth, and their allies, particularly those from grassroots community. This partnership should focus on mainstreaming and localizing WPS and YPS through an inclusive bottom-up approach, recognizing, of course, the cross-cutting issues that we have talked about in this panel discussion. And some examples or strategies include or can be capacity building initiatives that empower women and youth, creating meaningful opportunities for their participation in decision-making processes, and allocating resources that enable them to translate the principles of WPS and YPS into actionable outcomes. We believe that by fostering an environment where the voices of women and youth are heard and valued, we can ensure that these agendas are not only advanced, but also reflect the real needs and aspirations of communities. And for GNWP, we continue to remain steadfast in advancing these agendas within and beyond the ASEAN region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Soda. And thank you to all three of you for so succinctly summarizing so much that you are all doing at the moment in this space, and for joining us remotely and bringing your insights to us here in Brisbane, as well as to the many people who are joining online as well. So can I please ask people to join with me to thank Soda, Deepa, This brings us to the formal conclusion of our event, except to say, please do read and share the study. You can see a lot of work's gone into it, and hopefully it's the jumping off point for further work and action and research, as some of you in the room are doing. There's codes up, and you also will have had a link in your registration email. We'll be in touch kind of to follow up the event with some links and things, but for now to say thank you so much to those who have joined online. Thank you so much to those in the room. Those in the room, please stay and join us for the reception. The ship-in is very concerned that our snacks are getting cold. So we'll go out. Can I ask, please, the three panelists and Kartika just to stay on, and we'll ask the other panel to come up and take a photo of everyone who was involved, if that's all right with you four behind us. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful weekend and look forward to chatting further informal. Yes, can the panel one people come up? And then Marielle is.
If you have a line of.
Yeah, but not.
I do think there's.
Tell us if we need to shuffle.
Yeah.
around.
It looks good so far. We just need a bit of.
Sorry, it's just for the pen, sorry. It's just panelists. You're welcome to join us afterwards, but I just want to have it with everyone, you know. Do let people join us, please. And then we'll let people off.
And then,
offline.
Alrighty. That's all right. I can just Google it. That's okay. Yeah, I can see that. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Several cases. Like, I always want to go there.
And one more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, people. Appreciate it so much. Thank you for joining and making the time. It's wonderful.
my current challenge is,
Can you?
But what were you thinking about for your? Do you have any?
Very updated, very brief.